Hey guys, I see a lot of new faces out there. We're in the third week of our series, Nearsighted. It's about a guy named Mark who wrote a bunch of stories about people who were following Jesus. Gil's gonna tell us this week about a guy named Peter. Let's go.
Jesus and his disciples went on to the villages around Caesarea Philippi. On the way, he asked them, "Who do people say I am?" They replied, "Some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and still others one of the prophets." "But what about you?" he asked. "Who do you say I am?" Peter answered, "You are the Messiah." Jesus warned them not to tell anyone about him. He began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, and the teachers of the law, and that he must be killed and after 3 days rise again. He spoke plainly about this, and Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. But when Jesus turned and looked at his disciples, he rebuked Peter. "Get behind me, Satan," he said. "You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns." Then he called the crowd to him along with his disciples and said, "Whoever wants to be my disciples must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it. But whoever loses their life for me and for the gospel will save it. What good is it for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their souls? Or what can anyone give in exchange for their soul?"
When I was about 7 years old, me and my family went on a vacation to Hershey Park. And one day, my mom and my sisters, they were getting ready in the bathroom. My dad was away. He was working on a conference call or something. And I was over in the bedroom by myself and they were in the bathroom. And what you need to know about me is this. When I was a kid, I loved Beanie Babies. And some of you guys might not know what Beanie Babies are, but they're super cool. We'll show a picture. They kind of look like this. They're these collectible stuffed animals from the 90s and the early 2000s. I still think they're the coolest. I wish I would have kept my collection growing up. But anyway, we're there. My parents, my sister and my mom are in the bathroom. I'm in the bedroom. And you see, earlier that day, I had seen the bat Beanie Baby, like a bat. It was the coolest one I'd ever seen. It would have been the perfect addition to my collection. My mom wouldn't let me have it. I was disappointed. And so here we are. My mom and my sister are in the bathroom and suddenly the door shuts. My mom tries the handle. It's locked. She tries again, wiggles the doorknob, nothing. And soon they start knocking on the door and begging me to come over and help them get out of the bathroom as they're locked in. And let's just say I wasn't all that interested in helping them out. Finally, about an hour goes by and I have this idea. So I ask them, "Will you guys get me the bat Beanie Baby that I wanted so badly?" I asked. And, they were just like, yes, we'll do literally anything if you just let us out of the bathroom. And that's when I had the idea. What about 2 Beanie Babies? I struck quite the deal with them, to be honest. And finally, my family was set free. I may or may not have gotten what I wanted, and I may or may not have gotten in a lot of trouble in that situation. Not my brightest moment, but here's what I've noticed. There are all sorts of things like promising us this kind of deal in life, right? If you give me what I want, then you'll be set free. Some of you know we've been in this series called Nearsighted, working our way through the Gospel of Mark. And if it's your first time here with us today, welcome. We're glad you're here. Just want to catch you up on what's been going on. We've been working through Mark's Gospel and all these countless stories of people who drew near to Jesus and had their lives changed or were given a new lens to see the world and to see his kingdom through. As we've already noticed in Mark's Gospel, Jesus has gone about setting up his kingdom on earth, inviting people to draw near to it. He's the ruler of a new kingdom that's available to us here and now. But in Jesus' own time, there were also a lot of bad rulers. I don't mean the kind of stuff you measure stuff with. I mean the people and gods who promised prosperity and goodness and freedom. And in Mark chapter 8, Jesus takes his disciples somewhere really interesting. Check this out. Verse 27, it says, "Jesus and his disciples left Galilee and went up to the villages near Caesarea Philippi. And as they were walking along, he asked them, 'Who do people say that I am?' 'Well,' they replied, Some say John the Baptist, some say Elijah, and others say you're one of the prophets. And then he asked them, but who do you say that I am? And Peter replied, you are the Messiah. So Jesus brings his disciples up on a super long hike up into the mountains into Caesarea Philippi. And what you need to know about Caesarea Philippi is it's this place, it's the home of a pretty significant temple made for the gods. So there's a temple to the god Zeus, which you might have heard of, and this god Pan, who was sort of the god of like the nature and the wild. At this cave up in the mountains, people were invited to actually slaughter goats and animals and even humans, like kind of gross when you think about it, in order to keep these gods happy and receive happiness, prosperity, even freedom. And this is the exact place where Jesus takes his disciples up and asks them, who do you say that I am? These were the kind of gods that would take and take and take, but they never quite delivered, because they knew if they delivered, we would stop giving them what they want. These gods promised good stuff, but left people feeling like fools. Sometimes it feels like that in our world today. Like there are so many things catching our attention. Social media ads giving us a window into a cool kind of life or influence, new clothes. YouTubers seem to always be promoting kind of a new cool way of life. Everything around us feels like a billboard trying to sell us kind of a new life. That's how I feel, at least. It feels like so much around us is fighting for our trust, our allegiance, and will do whatever it takes to get you and I to buy in. If you'll just give in and give them what they want, then you'll be set free. And it often leaves us feeling disappointed, like a fool. But here's the thing. Jesus wasn't building the kind of kingdom that would be propped up by human blood or sacrifice or violence or manipulating people into some kind of good deal or a bargain for a good life. Jesus was inviting people into a world-changing kingdom of goodness. And that's why Peter is able to stand up in the middle of that cave, the place where humans and animals were being used in this sort of manipulative game, and say, you are the Messiah, the anointed one, the ruler. You see, Jesus is a good ruler, and he wants you and I to be a part of his kingdom. Bad rulers, they take and take and take. They make you a deal. They ask you to sacrifice. But Jesus is a good ruler, and he gives and gives and gives of himself and invites you and I to be a part. And Jesus asks a lot of us, but as we'll see, we can trust his invitation because he won't ask you and I to go with him anywhere that he hasn't gone himself. And that's why Jesus' rule will never leave us looking like a fool, because Jesus' kingdom brings freedom. And yet somehow all of this didn't really make sense to Peter. Check it out, verse 31 says, then Jesus began to tell them that the Son of Man must suffer many terrible things and be rejected by the elders, the leading priests, and the teachers of the religious law, that he would be killed, and 3 days later he would rise from the dead. As he talked about this openly with his disciples, Peter took him aside and began to reprimand him for saying such things. Jesus turned around and looked at his disciples, then reprimanded Peter. Get away from me, Satan, he said. Now listen to this. You are seeing things merely from a human point of view, not God's. You see, Peter had his own view of who Jesus was. He knew that Jesus was the Messiah, but wasn't able to quite see him through this cross-shaped lens. I mean, who could? Who could expect that Jesus, in order to accomplish his rule and his reign, would actually give himself up to suffering and to death into the hands of powerful people, and that's how he would rule? That's why Peter takes Jesus aside and says, surely, Jesus, like, you're gonna accomplish your kingdom and your rule just like everybody else, right? You're that kind of ruler. You'll go up and beat up the bad guys like John Wick or something. He just simply couldn't see that the kingdom would come through radical suffering and sacrifice, that Jesus was actually a good ruler and his kingdom has come through goodness. Peter still wasn't viewing Jesus through the right cross-shaped lens. Jesus wasn't telling him about some distant future where he would claim victory over the powers of darkness someday. See, he was inviting Peter to join in his kingdom right then and right there. And here's the thing. You and I are invited to be a part of his kingdom right here and right now. So it says this, then calling the crowd to join his disciples, he said, if any of you wants to be my follower, you must give up your own way, take up your cross and follow me. If you try to hang on to your life, you will lose it. But if you give up your life for my sake and for the sake of the good news, you will save it. See, Peter just simply couldn't see that the kingdom would come through this kind of sacrifice on the cross, that Jesus is a good ruler and his kingdom has come through goodness. But now Peter and others had the right lens to view the coming kingdom and how Jesus' rule would be accomplished. And they were asked to give their lives away to this movement to let Jesus rule in their lives and in their world. This is the invitation to join his rule, his kingdom. That's not just some faraway promise for a better life or good afterlife, but a kingdom that is active right here, right now. And you might say, well, how do we know it's worth it to buy into this thing? And as we're going to see next week, we can trust Jesus in his rule because he put himself on the line. You see, in Jesus, we don't have this transaction where if you do what he says, you're promised freedom and goodness. There's a whole lot of things around us saying, give me what I want. I can promise you freedom. Do this thing to get this thing, receive this promise. That's not what we have in Jesus. We don't have a transaction. We have an invitation. Jesus has said to us, here I am. I have given myself for you. Follow me. It's the only kingdom where the king pays the price, gives himself so that the people are set free. And he invites us, take up your cross, the sign of the kingdom of goodness. In other words, join in, be a part, accept the invitation, join the movement, change the world with me by letting Jesus rule in your life today. Man, that is a high calling. But be honest with yourself. Are you ready for that kind of thing? When was the last time you gave your life away to something bigger than yourself? What we'll see is that this kind of kingdom was built by and is still being built by young people who one by one say yes and take up their cross and let Jesus lead them into the future, trusting his rule because it is worth it. My friends, God's kingdom has drawn near and it is active right here and right now. How will you respond to your invitation?